Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad to see you all today. My name is Laura Tamblyn Watson. I'm the CEO of CanAge, Canada's National Seniors Advocacy Organization. We're a nonpartisan, not-for-profit organization that is coast to coast to coast that works to advance the rights and well-being of older Canadians and all Canadians as we age. We are nonpartisan. That's particularly important to emphasize one more time. Our goal today is to help us understand a bit more about how to vote, some concerns about how COVID-19 may affect that voting, to understand a little bit more around questions that we are seeking out around the process of voting. So this is not telling you who to vote for. Happy to have other conversations around where you would like to vote for, but this is about the how to vote. So we're excited to help you get the vote out. We don't care who you vote for. We just want to make sure that you're able to do it. CanAge has been extremely busy, as you can imagine, during the course of this last 18 months with the pandemic, as have so many of us. And we are interested in ensuring that older people and our supporters are able to exercise their democratic rights, depending on how their demography is. So it's the demography and the democratics together in this particular area. I am not in my usual place. And actually, just in advance of this, I registered to vote by mail for the first time in my life. I have always gone with my little voter card down to the long-term care home, which was the typical place that I voted before. And certainly changes are happening there as well. So many things are a little bit different with this year. With no further ado, I'm so pleased as well to introduce to you our representative and our expert speaker today, David LeBlanc from Elections Canada. If you have a look at David's bio and resume, you will see that he has been focused on supporting Canadians exercise their democratic rights with Elections Canada for, at this point, more than a decade. And we've really appreciated all the expert work that he does. Part of the key work that he is doing, which I know he'll share more of, is to ensure that stakeholders are able to share information about how to vote. The importance of voting, again, is of course critical to this. The way that we're going to be doing this time period is I will shortly invite David to take the floor, and he will share a fabulous presentation for about half of our time together. We're going to then do a Q&A for the last 20 minutes. We encourage you to put the questions in the chat box. Two of our team members, Nate and Lawrence, are ready and waiting to capture your questions and make sure that they're filtered to us here so we can get your questions answered. So do feel free to use the chat all the way through. We'll be able to do that as well. David will talk a little bit about what is Elections Canada and the Inspired Democracy program, and also provide some general information about this election and how it's going to be a little bit different than in times past. So with no further ado, I just want to start by acknowledging that I am on the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq, which is an unceded territory. And also, you have the opportunity to reflect on where you are today and your connection with the land, your connection with the Indigenous peoples, and thinking through as we move forward with our Truth and Reconciliation Day on September the 30th, what it means to have the right to vote in an election. And for many Indigenous people who do not have that right to vote, how that this is actually in a lifetime a bit of a change in terms of democracy. So I just invite us all to think about the importance of voting, and for those Indigenous peoples who had restrictions on voting as we move forward with our September 30th Truth and Reconciliation Day. With no further ado, I invite David to take the stage. What I'm going to do is just orient you, for those who have not used Zoom as much as some of us have, to the bottom of your screen. If you would like to see David just as his whole face, which I'm going to do, I encourage you to go on most people's top right hand. You'll see a little grid. If you're on an iPad or tablet, it may be on the bottom. It will say view, and you can click that and turn to speaker view. I'm in gallery view, which means I get to see all your lovely faces today. But if I just want to focus on the main stage, you can click to speaker view, and that will give you the one person talking and everybody else in front of it. So it's up to you. You have the opportunity as well to use the chat function. If you're looking for that, you would click the little bubble in the middle of the bottom screen, and that will open up a side panel for you. And you can see that you can write to everyone, or you can choose a person to write to as well. If you're excited and you want to express a reaction, we have a little reactions thing. I'm going to put a little heart in my reactions, or if I'm curious and I want to say a thumbs up, you can do that. So if you're wanting to express your reactions and you want to do that with emoticons as opposed to in the chat function, do feel free to let us know how you're feeling. Again, Wynn's got a great one. Some people have 2 monitors and they're going to have one in one way, one the other, whatever works best for you. But I just wanted to share with you that you can do that. If you want to keep your gallery, you want to see everybody, but you don't want to see people who have their names muted, you can click in a dark box. So if you have somebody who doesn't have their face showing, you can click on the top right screen and you will say that you can just show people who are on screen. So those are a couple little tips for Zoom. All right, now we move to the main show. David LeBlanc has been an absolute godsend to us at Elections Canada as we've been trying to navigate and support people who are really challenging as to what they're going to do in terms of voting for this election and gathering information for yourselves as well as for other people, trying to do some myth busting as about worries that people have and support people in making sure that they get their right to vote exercise. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn my screen to that click view button and move to speaker gallery and turn the stage over to David. Thank you, David.
Thank you so much, Laura. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. We are in full swing at Elections Canada, as I'm sure you can imagine. This, however, is a wonderful opportunity for me because it gives me the opportunity to chat directly with electors and people who are interested about the election, who want to learn more. It's easy being stuck away in our virtual cubicles and not seeing the results of our work. So it's wonderful to be able to come face to face with you folks. I am here in Ottawa, which is on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. It is day 12 for the election, so that means less than 2 weeks until election day. What my plan was for today was to share with you folks a presentation which I'll put up. Now, it's going to cover quite a bit of material. I hope you bear with me. And as Laura said, I'll be answering the questions, I think, at the end of the presentation. So don't hesitate to throw those into the chat. And with that, I will see if I can get this thing shared. Okay, so I believe we're all looking at that presentation. Wonderful. So believe it or not, this is the 44th general federal election. Elections Canada has been doing what it does since 1920, as far as I know. We are the oldest independent electoral management body in the world. So we've been at it a long time. That being said, every election presents new challenges, new improvements, innovations, and things like that, new contexts, which is certainly the case here. So a little bit about Elections Canada. We are an independent, nonpartisan agency of Parliament. So we don't report to a minister. We report, the Chief Electoral Officer reports directly to Parliament through the Standing Committee of Procedure and House Affairs. And we run the election. We run federal general elections. We don't run provincial elections or municipal elections. It's federal elections and by-elections. And in very, very rare instances, we run federal referenda, which hasn't happened since the Second World War, actually. We're really focused on, especially now, informing electors on when, where, and the different ways that they can register and vote in federal elections. You'll probably hear me say this throughout the presentation, but I can't emphasize it enough. Elections.ca is the authoritative and up-to-date source for information about the election. So always encouraging folks to check that out if they any questions pop into their head about the election. So some pretty basic stuff, which I think most people here are going to be familiar with, but who can vote? So in order to vote in a federal election, you need to be a Canadian citizen, at least 18 years old on election day, and be able to prove your identity and address. I'm going to get a little bit more into that later. What is a interesting tidbit of trivia, I think, is that, Elections Canada actually has one of the most accessible electoral systems when it comes to who can vote. In fact, there is only one Canadian citizen over the age of 18 years that cannot vote, and that is my boss, the Chief Electoral Officer. Every single other person that fits these three criteria can vote, which is kind of rare in the world, but there you have it. So I'm going to start with what's kind of the beginning for many electors. It's registration. So voter registration is an important part of registering. The Act requires all electors to be registered, but to be honest, it's a pretty easy part as well. A lot of people are already registered to vote. And the way that you can do it is to, once again, go to elections.ca and click to see if you're registered in our registration, our online registration section. So there's a lot of benefits to being registered. One, like I said, it's necessary. But the other important part is it's how we get you that handy dandy voter information card and make sure that it gets to the right place and has all the right information on it. So that's a bonus. The other thing is it contains a lot of really valuable information: where your polling site is, when the polls are open, and that includes advanced polls, the location of your local returning office. That's important too, because which I'll get to in a sec, you can actually go there right now after this presentation and go cast a ballot. Also tons of information on that card about the accessibility of your polling site. So should you have any accessibility needs, that card will have a lot of information for you. And one, not the least of which on that card, is the phone number for your local returning office. And your local returning officer is the individual that's responsible to deliver the election in your electoral district, or what we commonly call riding. So not a bad person to get a hold of should you have any questions, because they are the ones that pretty much run the election in your neighborhood. Elections Canada keeps all this information safe. We use firewalls, data encryption, and procedural controls to make sure that it is all safe. So as I mentioned, you can register before the election online at elections.ca. You can do it by mail. You call that number and we'll get you a registration form in the snail mail. And it's perhaps not as convenient in the sense that it might slow things down for you a little bit on polling day or at the polls, but you certainly can register when you go vote. So unlike other jurisdictions, I know some people follow elections to the south in the United States, but in certain jurisdictions there, you have to be registered in advance of election day before you can vote. That's not the case here in Canada. We really err on the side of accessibility and want every citizen who wants to vote to be able to do so. So come on in. You just need your ID. You do have to be at your assigned polling station. And how you figure that out is you visit elections.ca and put your postal code into that little voter information box at the top left, and it will tell you what your assigned polling station is. So those are the ways to do it. And of course, anytime at any Elections Canada office across Canada, you can go into and do it before election day at 6 p.m. and you'll be good to go. Now, we covered off the big chunks of this already, but like I said, one thing I want to draw attention to here is requests for voting assistance in advance. Elections Canada offers a lot of voting assistance. So if you have language needs, including sign language or in simultaneous interpretation we can accommodate. We just need to know in advance. So do check that voter information card and get that phone number. And if you think that you or someone you know that you're a caregiver for might require some sort of assistance at the polls, do not hesitate to reach out to Elections Canada at that phone number, and we will accommodate. Now, I talked about ID, and again, Elections Canada accepts a ton of different ID. So there are three options. The first option is the one that is identified in the Act, the Canada Elections Act, which Elections Canada administers. And that is the one that's probably common to a whole lot of folks. It is a government issued piece of ID with your photo, name, and your current address. It needs to have all three of those things. And of course, the most common example that people are probably thinking of and have probably used in the past is a driver's license. So that is one that is a very commonly used piece of ID. I believe there might be a few provinces whose health card fits the bill, but no, not all of them. Some health cards will have a photo and your name, but they might not have your address on it. So another piece of trivia I'll give here is the passport does not qualify as this option one, in that in your passport there is no address. It is actually the individual who puts their own address in pen, and therefore it doesn't meet this qualification. So I know a lot of people think it's one of the ultimate pieces of identification, and they think to bring it at the polls. You can still bring it, but it would only serve as one piece of ID under option 2, which I'll get into now. So option 2 says you can show 2 pieces of ID, but both will have to have your name, and one of them will have to have your current address. And there is a huge list of ID. It's actually getting over 50 different types of ID that Elections Canada will accept at the polls. I'll give you some common examples and then a few that you might not think of. We accept library cards. We accept bus passes. We accept phone bills, utility bills, mortgage statements, leasing agreements, of course, social security cards, like I said, health cards and passports, hunting licenses. We accept band membership cards for First Nations folks. We accept Métis membership cards. We accept lots and lots of pieces of ID. Now, some that people might not be aware of is we accept hospital bracelets. We accept prescription pill bottles that have your name. So I'm not kidding. There is a huge list, and we really want to make sure that folks realize that they probably have the ID in their purse, in their wallet, in their top drawer. Just have a look, compare it with our list available on elections.ca, and see if you don't already fit the criteria. Another piece of really interesting trivia that's important to remember: Elections Canada accepts expired ID. That it doesn't have to be, if you have old driver's licenses kicking around, they're still good. The caveat is they have to have your current address on them. So if you're using them as proof of address, if it's an old driver's license from an old home you used to live in, you can still use it. You would just have to clearly indicate that this is in fulfillment of the second piece of ID that has your name on it. And then you would have, let's say, a current piece of mail, like a phone bill, which would be your current address that you would want to be registered at. And then lastly, on option 2, you can show the ID on your phone, meaning if you have, a lot of us do e-banking or get our bills on the phone now digitally. You don't have to print those out and carry them in paper or what have you. You can show those on your phone, and that is accepted as well. Now, lastly, if you absolutely cannot come up with any identification, we still want you to vote. You are still eligible to vote. What you need to do is to get a neighbor who can prove their ID and address, and they will go with you to vote and vouch for you. So they'll sign a declaration, and you will sign a declaration, and then they will essentially vouch for your identity and your address. Now, this person does have to be assigned to the same polling station as you, so that's why I use the term neighbor. And the other caveat is that individual can only vouch for one person. So you can't show up with an entire family and have that one individual vote for that whole family. It really is one at a time. One only, I should say. Now, one thing that you should be aware of, because I know there's a broad audience here, one thing that Elections Canada, a piece that you'll see on our website where we list all those pieces of ID, are something called letters of confirmation. So if you work for an institution, you're an administrator at an institution that provides shelter services or provides meals services for, let's say, homeless folks. Those institutions, First Nations is another example. First Nation administrators could write a letter of confirmation. So that just says, I'm an administrator in this First Nation. I'm an administrator at this service organization that provides meal or shelter services for homeless folks. And I attest that this person is who they say they are, and they receive services at this facility. That is then one of those option 2 pieces of ID that you can have that will prove your identity and your address. So you would just need a bus pass or something else, a library card, to go with it to fulfill those requirements for option 2. So that in a nutshell is the ID regime for elections. And like I said, it is very inclusive and fairly accessible. So, if you're talking to folks and they say, oh, I'd vote, but I don't have the right ID, they'd be surprised that maybe they do. And like I said, worst case scenario, get a neighbor, show up and have them vouch for you. So there you go. All the stuff I already covered about ID cards, the electronically issued cards or pieces acceptable as well. Oh, and this is one thing I forgot to mention, very important. Your voter information card can also serve as proof of address and ID. So another great thing, show up that and your library card, good to go. All right, into the pressing stuff now here on day 12. These are the ways that you can vote. So of course, the most common one that people are familiar with, this election will be run on Monday, September 20th, election day. I think most people are familiar with this. You show up during the polling hours of your assigned polling site. Laura was not wrong. Due to the pandemic, many polling sites have had to change for local health and safety reasons often. So do make sure that you check your voter information card. Don't make the mistake of showing up to the polling site that you've had for years, maybe decades, because there's a chance it might not still be the same one. So check that voter information card. If you don't have that, no big deal. You do not need the voter information card to vote. You can go to elections.ca and punch in your postal code into that text field, and it will tell you where your assigned polling site is. And do check when the hours are. They are staggered across the country. You can vote on advanced polling days, and exciting news, they start on Friday. So that's September 10th, the Friday, the Saturday, the Sunday, and the Monday. So whether the weekdays or weekend are more convenient for you, go ahead and take advantage of that. Now, this is great news for a pandemic environment because you're going to have the opportunity to spread out that time. You can check out when you're comfortable. If you're dedicated to voting in person, you can spread out the time that you go when you think it's not going to be as busy. Lots of hours in the day across those 4 days. So again, that information will also be on your voter information card, and it's also at elections.ca. So do check it out. I'm a big fan of advanced polling days because I'm pretty busy on election day. I like the convenience. So that's one that I leverage frequently. Now, one that's pretty important this time around that hasn't been very popular in the past, but we've been doing it for decades, is voting by mail. I'm going to get to that in a bit more detail just because I think for this election, it does warrant a bit of a deeper dive. Another way, which I am highly encouraging this time around for folks that want to vote in person and don't want to navigate the vote by mail system, you can vote now. We can wrap up when we're done. Don't run out right now because I still have a bit more information to give. But after that, if you're so inclined, you know who you want to vote for. You can go to any Elections Canada office across the country, and there are hundreds of them, literally, and vote. So it doesn't have to be, if you're one of the lucky ones that are traveling, you can go and pop in wherever you are. You will, of course, need the ID to situate you in your home riding. But you go ahead and vote, and you do need to know the name of your candidate that you want to vote for, and it's an option. And like I said, this one has even more flexibility than advanced polls, in that, like I said, it's anytime, as long as that office is open. You can check elections.ca to find out the hours of your local returning office. You can vote. So that's one I would highly recommend. Now, there are other ways. Like I said, Elections Canada really wants you to vote if you are so inclined. For folks that have severe mobility issues or disabilities where they simply cannot leave their home, reach out to Elections Canada as soon as possible to make arrangements. In exceptional circumstances, we will literally send someone to your home to make sure that you can vote. It's obviously a service we can't offer to everyone, so it's reserved for those folks who really, really need it. But it is there as an option. All right, so I glossed over vote by mail initially. Here we go into some of the detail. If you want to vote by mail, now is the time where you really need to have a plan if you haven't done so already, because deadlines apply. So if you're an elector living in Canada, you follow these steps here. Go online, elections.ca, and apply to vote by mail. We'll send you a kit. This kit is a secure kit. There's a double envelope system. It is postage paid. You fill out your ballot and you drop it in the mailbox. That is pretty much it. But there are some details. A few things to bear in mind. I'll probably go over this again because it's an important deadline. The deadline that applies for this election is September 14th. That's September 1-4. That is the deadline to apply for a vote by mail kit. If it's after that, we cannot send it out because, again, we need to ensure that you have time. The ballot has to make it from us to you. You have to have time to receive that ballot, fill it out, get it back into the post, and it has to get back to us. So September 14th is actually in the act. It is not an arbitrary date. It is a legislated date. It's defined by the act, so we all have to follow it. So please do go ahead and do that. Now, here's something that is a bonus, almost exclusive for this information session. If you managed to apply to vote by mail before the 14th and there were delays or there were some issues with your kit arriving and you don't think you're gonna be able to get the kit mailed back in time, we will have drop boxes at your assigned polling site where you can drop the ballot box off on election day. Okay, this isn't we're not advertising this broadly because it is not an easy thing for Elections Canada to manage, because all these ballots need to be counted by the returning officer. And if they all come in at the last minute like this, it's going to cause delays. So we're not tweeting this out yet on social media. We'll start to do it when there's less than a week to go before the election. But I just want to take the opportunity to assure folks that we're really taking every step we can to make sure that your ballot counts. So if you're concerned, it's getting to be 3 days before election day, September 17th. You still haven't put it in the mail and you're worried because it has to come back to Ottawa to Elections Canada for us to count in our distribution center. You bring that with you to your assigned, the ballot, the complete kit, everything that you have there, and you can drop it off in a ballot box. That then will be emptied at your local returning officer and they will count the ballot. So an important thing that I really have to stress here, this only works if you are a local elector. So it really has to be your assigned ballot. So or your assigned polling site, sorry. So if you are in, let's say, Victoria on vacation on September 20th, you cannot just from, let's say, Saskatoon, you can't just show up to any polling site in Victoria, British Columbia, and drop your ballot off in their drop box, because it will not get counted, because it goes back to the returning office for that Victoria electoral district. So that's one thing to bear in mind. This is why we're really asking for folks to plan ahead this election. And if you ever have any doubts and you're able to, just head into your local Elections Canada office and just vote, get it over with. It's super convenient. And an interesting fact, it uses almost the identical process as vote by mail. It's just a special ballot. The only difference is at an Elections Canada office, you can have someone help you out if you need to, and guide you through the process. So there you have it. That is vote by mail. Now, I did mention accessible polling stations. All electors are assigned polling stations for election day and advance. So do check your cards, your voter information cards. Like I said, elections.ca also has the information. If you have accessibility needs, reach out as soon as possible so that we can make sure you're provided with the services that you need. Now, what you're going to see on polling sites, we have bigger ballots, so easier to read in large print. We have large print and braille lists of candidates to help make sure that you can see those. Tactile and braille voting templates. So for those folks that are blind, might be familiar with this from previous elections, you slot your ballot in and it helps you independently be able to mark your ballot. We have magnifiers present at polling sites. Language and sign language interpretation, like I mentioned, that needs to be requested in advance, but it will be provided. And you can have assistance marking your ballot. You can bring someone you know or ask an election worker to help you there. This time in the pandemic election, there will be a large grip pencil, but it will be a single-use pencil. For the sake of the environment, I am encouraging you all to bring them home. Keep them. It's a souvenir, and I'd love to know that these pencils that we have to have as single use because of the pandemic are getting reused somewhere else. Another piece of trivia that you might be interested in, you can bring your own writing utensil. A pen is acceptable. If you bring it yourself, we will not provide you with one. But if you're more comfortable using your own writing utensil, please do bring it in, pencil or pen. Now, this is a popular topic. This is a pandemic election, but rest assured that safety measures will be in place. We're doing everything we can to ensure that both workers, electors, candidate representatives, everybody that is inside a polling site is safe and secure. All poll workers will be wearing masks. There will be hand sanitizer stations. You'll all be familiar with physical distancing markers. Only one poll worker per desk. This is new. For those that have worked elections before or voted before, will be familiar with the 2 people typically at a desk. Because it was difficult to maintain the 6 feet of distance, we've conflated that position into one. And those poll workers will be behind a plexiglass barrier. So there you have it. Now, for the electors, we're asking that all electors do wear a mask, and you will be provided, like I said, a single-use pencil, and you can bring your own. We ask that everyone practices physical distancing by staying 2 meters apart, just as you would at the bank or at the grocery store. And definitely, if an elector is tested positive or has symptoms of COVID, you should apply to vote by mail at elections.ca as early as possible. If you have any specific questions about the latter, do reach out to your local returning officer ASAP. All right, important dates. So, we've gone past most of these at this point. Offices are now all open. The list of candidates is a final. And the guide to the federal elections and the voter information cards have all been mailed out. Now, that being said, Canada Post tells us September 10th is the date where most Canadians should have received these 2 pieces of mail. If you haven't received your voter information card in the mail by this Friday, we encourage you to reach out to Elections Canada and let us know that. And you can do that by either visiting elections.ca or the phone number on at elections.ca. It's also been plastered throughout this presentation. So there you go, Friday, September 10th, what I was saying. Advanced polls start this Friday, the 10th to the 13th, and 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., that's standard across the country. So do go ahead and take advantage of that if you are so inclined. I'd mentioned Tuesday, September 14th as the deadline to vote by mail, to apply to vote by mail. Super important deadline if that's your choice. Please take note of that one. And then September 14th is the deadline as well for all those accessibility features we mentioned in terms of language or sign interpretation. Please reach out to Elections Canada by September 14th if you think you will require these services. And the big day, September 20th, bring your ID and show up at your assigned poll. We'll make sure you get to vote. All right, and since this is such an engaged group, I'm told we're always asking for help. Here's a list of a good chunk of our information products that are available in the spread the word section of of elections.ca. So, we have pieces on pretty much all facets of the election services that we provide. So if you want to help us get the word out, you can send these along to folks. They're great on social media, for example, but do check them out. An interesting fact is we provide key pieces of information, including this guide to the federal election and our list of accepted ID in over 30 what we call heritage languages, so Portuguese, Japanese, Arabic, and over 16 indigenous languages. So those are available. We have them digitally on our website, and they are all these products are the products I mentioned, are free to order in physical copy from our website. So I do encourage you to check that out as well if you know folks that would rather have something in their hand. And I'll talk a little bit about Inspire Democracy, which I haven't talked about to date in this presentation, but it is very near and dear and close to my heart. It is the program I am responsible for at Elections Canada. This is inspiredemocracy.ca, where we work to reduce barriers to electoral participation for certain demographics in Canadian society that face barriers when compared to the rest of the population when they're trying to participate in the election. So these groups of people are Indigenous electors, youth, new Canadians, and electors with disabilities, and there's a few others. And when I say electoral participation, I mean, being a candidate, running in a federal election, working at a federal election, and registering and voting. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on these resources because really we do a big chunk of this work in between elections. But number 3, registering and voting is still relevant. If you are consider yourself an organizer, a mobilizer, someone who does run, a social club or sports team or whatever. If you want to provide an information session, that number 3 is a great resource for you, and it is available at inspiredemocracy.ca. I mentioned our physical resources that we have available. Do visit and accessible formats. That'd be remiss if I didn't mention. Braille, audio CD, large print format are all available at elections.ca with links from Inspired Democracy CA as well. So please don't hesitate to get that information in different formats. So normally I'd have questions here, but we're going to get to it in a sec. I do want to have a call to action again because folks are so engaged. Do follow us on social media. It really is the most up-to-date and instantaneous way to communicate with us or to get information from us. It often cites information from elections.ca, which is the authoritative source. We're on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And that's it. Like we say, you can take time to familiarize yourself with our materials, order physical resources if you think you're going to do a bit of outreach. and share our digital resources. This is our generic inspired, that's specific to my team. So if you email this box, you don't go through the system. You go directly to one of my team members will get this email, and it would be treated in due haste ASAP. That being said, info@elections.ca is the official Elections Canada inquiry line. So if you have very specific questions about how things might be run, do reach out to info@elections.ca. And lastly, yeah, there's the websites there. And then lastly, don't hesitate. Now that we're in the election, your local Elections Canada office is open. They are the authority on administering the election in your neighborhood. So in many ways, what they're doing, we might not even know about it. So do not hesitate to contact by phone or walk into your local Elections Canada office. And I will stop sharing here, and holy jumping, I see we have 1 or 2 questions in the chat, which is just wonderful.
Just 1 or 2. David, thank you so much. We've got a really engaged group. And yeah, when you stop sharing your screen, we should all pop up back on the screen. So first of all, thank you so much. As you can tell, and I tell our members and colleagues that are joining us today, we got the best of the best. When I said we had some real questions, we were really appreciative of the response. I just want to share with you that I have wrote to elections, info@elections.ca, and I'm always a little bit, how is that going to actually work? I had an email back within minutes. I had a person on a phone within minutes after that. I talked to a number of different people about some very technical questions. I was really impressed at the degree of responsiveness and willingness to share information. So just a little bit of feedback for anyone who's thinking about reaching out and wonders if anything with the word info at or 1-800 is actually going to be answered by a human being. The answer is yes, and they're actually lovely, and they will get back to you right away. So we have lots of great questions, and I just wanted to welcome some new people that have come in over the course, and great to see some friendly faces as well. Nate, we've got lots of questions going on here. I'm going to invite Nate Rubin to our stage, and maybe we'll pick off some of the smaller ones first and then get to some of the bigger, meatier, complex ones a little bit later. So Nate, who do we have first for questions for David? David, this is you on the hot seat now. You ready?
I am. Let's go.
All right, let's do it.
Sure thing. Thanks, guys. So Sima had asked early on to please address the how-tos of voting by mail. I think that we did that, but if you have more specific questions about voting by mail, please put those in the chat now, and I hope we'll be able to get to them. Trish asked, how and who supervises election voting in long-term care facilities in Canada?
Great question, and a super important one given the context surrounding the pandemic and long-term care facilities. The answer is we negotiate with each individual facility, and we want to accommodate their needs. So returning officers were tasked by the chief electoral officer to reach out to every single long-term care facility in their jurisdiction and make sure that their election needs are met. So I won't get into too many of the detailed specifics, but they negotiate with the facility administration. We can either send in fully vaccinated employees to work those polls, or we can hire and train from a list of staff and family members that are already within or embedded adjacent to that community, the long-term care facility. So the key here is we work with each facility to find the solution that works best for each unique situation that's there.
And I just want to build on that, David. I shared that I usually go down to my long-term care facility that I work with, and that's also my polling station, typically, not this year. And one of the questions a lot of our members had was, are long-term care facilities or even congregate seniors care facilities going to be general voting stations, general polling stations this year? And I think you touched on that a little bit before, but I just invite you to clarify. Are they going to be general voting statements for the neighborhood this year?
The official answer is it'll depend on the advice or again, the individual facility. I can pretty much assure you that the vast majority will not have
Yeah.
external people coming in off the street. Again, it's all about the safety and health and safety of the residents. And I can tell you that the workers in Elections Canada are so dedicated that if there's people within that facility that can't even make it down to the lobby to where typically these stations are to vote, the dedicated staff there will close down their polling site, head up to the floor that you're on, and make sure you get to vote. Again, everything has to, the earlier we know about everything, the better, so we can have time to provide this service. But health and safety is a primary concern for Elections Canada.
You bet. Okay, but Nate, back to you.
Thanks. So I see that Sima actually did ask a specific question about voting by mail. Does your signature need to be notarized or confirmed by a witness?
Absolutely not. Nope. It doesn't. In fact, you'll notice that you don't sign a ballot, right? So everything is, we use a double envelope system, complete with a ballot with the counterfoil system to ensure it's completely anonymous. But you know, you don't have to sign your ballot when you vote either, right? So don't worry about that. We have to find a balance with the vote by mail in terms of accessibility and integrity and security of the ballot. It is an unsupervised method of voting, but once that ballot reaches its destination, all care is taken to ensure that the person that registered to get this kit is indeed the one who has the ballot corresponds to that individual. When it arrives, then it gets anonymized because it's removed from the double envelope system, and it's dropped into the box where, just like if you were standing in a polling site and dropped it in, it's the same thing. So there you have it.
Thanks, David. Our next question comes from Christine. She told us that in the past election, federal parties offered to come pick me up because of my disability and did not come because they found out I voted for another party. How can I complain?
Well, unfortunately, that's not Elections Canada. I would. Can I
No, and
recommend social media?
I'm gonna jump in there, David, and rescue out of that one here. So what I think is really important is to ensure that you're not leaving up your voting to somebody else, and that Elections Canada has a lot of accessibility. And so what's important here is to make sure that we fully understand your accessibility needs, and to call the Elections Canada office, go to the returning office, whatever works for you in form of communication, to make sure that you're not left in somebody else's hands. So it's a really important point that you raise there, and I'm really grateful for it, because if we are relying on someone else to get us there for whatever reason that is or isn't, you know, the idea is that Elections Canada is making it so accessible that you shouldn't have to rely on anyone else. So that's a really important piece here. Nate, I saw a note from David about COVID-19. I wonder if we could turn to that one.
Sure. David asked, if you were asked to go for a COVID test a few days before election and can't vote in person, what is the best action to take?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. So it would depend specifically on the time that you have left. So there is an unfortunate area where if you first and foremost, we're asking all electors to consider this as a possibility. Like, we don't know, right? This could happen. That's why you hear me pumping the Elections Canada office. That's why I'm talking about vote by mail, and that's why I'm talking about advanced polls. The unfortunate truth is once you get past within a few days of election day and you haven't leveraged any of the other options, you're going to be out of luck. And it's just the one part of a pandemic election that is truly unfortunate. But we have to be responsible for everyone's health and well-being. So if you come in even under the impression that a chance that you have COVID, obviously you were testing for a reason, you know, you're going to be asked to stay home. And that is the one sliver of demographic where you're going to be out of luck. But like I said, we're really hoping that we can get the word out for people not to get to that situation, to just have it in your mind that you never know. Go ahead and take advantage of all those advanced voting opportunities.
Thanks so much. Shall I go ahead with the next question? Laura, did you want to?
Yeah, I think it's just a couple of questions about what an advanced ballot looks like inside. You open it up, and what do you need to write, and whose name is on it, and so on. Maybe you could cull out a couple of those together. I saw that there's a few asking about which name would be on it, or
Yes.
what does it look like when you open it up?
Okay,
So,
so, oh,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
no, I think that is the question, so I'll let you handle it. Thanks.
Okay, sure. So I don't want to get into semantics here, but there is a distinction between an advanced ballot, which is a regular ballot. It looks as normal as anything. So this is the one that when you show up to your advanced polling site, you will see that familiar black, white box, white circle. You put an X beside the candidate. For those who voted before, this will look very familiar. Special ballot is a little bit different. There's a lot that's similar, but you would actually have to write in the name of your candidate. Now, it's possible that with the if you're showing up locally to your local Elections Canada office, now that the list of nominations candidates is confirmed, you might be given a regular ballot to sign off on. That I'm not 100% sure at exactly where we are in this stage. So don't be surprised if that's the case. But what we advise for people that are voting by special ballot, so the vote by mail, when it comes in, you will have to write the name of your candidate. So you need to know the name of your candidate. Now, there's a lot of ways you can figure that out. The one I would recommend is to visit elections.ca, put in your postal code, and you get all that information for your electoral district. So a complete list of the candidates and their parties will be listed there as well.
Thanks, David. And so just to be clear, it's the name of your local party constituent and not the party leader?
Oh, yes, 100%. Oh, that's a great point. Sorry, I think I probably glossed over that. So in Canada's parliamentary system, you do not vote for the party leader. This is an important distinction, and one that might be a bit confusing, especially how close we are to the United States and all the media we consume from them. You vote for your local representative, your local member of parliament. So this is the individual that you vote for. So there are 338 electoral districts, with each one representing one seat in Canada's House of Commons. And the leader, which is convention, of the party that received the most seats will become the prime minister. So do know the name of your local candidate. But again, that'll be pretty obvious if you do visit elections.ca and punch in that information. You'll be able to see it there.
Thanks so much, David. So just a couple more to go here. Sandy brought up that going online and applying to vote by mail might be a roadblock for seniors. I was wondering if we could address that.
Yeah, it absolutely, and not just seniors, to be frank, but a lot of youth have expressed this might be a bit of a surprise, but or it might be a bit of a surprise to some. A lot of youth aren't very familiar with the post system at all. So we are aware of it as potentially being a barrier. And not just that, I would say in my many years in working in elections that for many Canadians, there's something almost ritualistic or ceremonial about election day. Where you stand, well, formerly shoulder to shoulder, but now let's say 6 feet apart from your neighbors and fellow citizens, and you cast a ballot for how your country is going to be governed for the next few years. So there's something to be said for people wanting to show up in person anyway. Which is why we want to have multiple options for people. So we're not actually pushing, believe it or not, vote by mail, even though it's a pandemic scenario, just because we want Canadians to be able to choose the way that they vote, given that we've given you a whole bunch of options here. And each one is going to be as safe and secure as possible. So yes, we do acknowledge that in some of these options aren't going to be ideal for everyone, but we certainly hope that that doesn't inhibit people from voting in a different way, because we've really tried to make each way as simple as possible.
Thanks, David. And so for voting by mail, can you call or visit Elections Canada to get the necessary resources you need to vote by mail?
Absolutely can call. So you can reach out to us any way that's convenient for you. I see someone put up the phone number. Thank you so much for that. info@elections.ca would also get you the information you need. But really, if you just go to elections.ca, you'll see there's a vote by mail button prominently displayed. And then you would just apply online to vote by mail. You can do it that way. Or, like I said, you call and there'll be an agent on the other end of the line that'll walk you through the process to apply for a vote by mail kit. Don't forget, deadlines apply. September 14th is the deadline to apply for a vote by mail kit.
Thank you so much. I'm going to jump in at this time and just thank David for his really enormously helpful walkthrough. I think part of what we're all doing is coming together and trying to figure out what voting looks like in the time of a pandemic. And I know that Elections Canada has been working around the clock. It's not your fault we're having an election. You're here to make sure that it's working well. And I really commend all the fantastic work that you and your teams have done. Very excited about the Inspire Democracy. I have an idea about working on that program with you. I want to share with you, and I'm going to ask my colleagues to put some of these things in our chat box as well, some of the tools that CanAge has created. Now, again, we don't care who you vote for. We just want to make sure that you do vote. But to help you navigate this system, I'm going to share our screen. And again, you can find this at CanAge.ca. We have a federal election voter toolkit, which you can see here. And again, we'll put the links in the screen. If you click on the voter toolkit, you will see, again, this is all free, the information about how to vote in long-term care or hospital, voting from outside of Canada. You know, how do you accommodate people who may need a bit of extra support? So this is all confirming the information we've heard today. Again, pictures of those voting cards so you can see what it looks like and you can share with other people so they know what you need to do. If you need a person to help you vote, it talks a little bit about that as well. If you'd like to reach out to your candidates and try to figure out, you know, who's your person and what are the questions that you have for them, here is the information in the voter guide that can guide you around that. If you're looking at getting in touch or planning questions, this can help you do that. We also have tips for letter writing. So you can actually take these templates that we've created and plug and play on your particular issues if you're interested. The last thing I want to share with you is some of the information that we've been coming up with around what the different platforms say. So if you go to CanAge.ca/election21, and again, you can see that in the chat box here, and we'll make sure that this information is circulated with a following up email. I'm just going to scroll. You can see what the different parties are saying. So if you wanted to see, and I'm just randomly choosing the Liberal Party, we have blocked out what the different seniors issues are and how they have indicated them. We'll do this for all of the parties as well. So we've done it for everything, including the three parties that we usually think about, the Conservatives, the Liberals, and the NDP, as well as the Green Party and the Bloc Québécois. So this is a way, we're not telling you who to vote for, but if you're trying to figure out how to compare on issues that may matter to you, we do hope that you'll have this opportunity to review the information we've synthesized and then help guide you through thinking about what issues you want to raise when you or your loved ones, family members, friends, neighbors want to get together and talk about how to vote. Again, we just want to make sure that you can vote. The voter toolkit is a great way of doing that. And again, we'll update our Election 21 website on a daily basis to make sure you have the most recent information. Last, I want to share with you that we've been inviting each of the leaders to do one-on-one conversations and town halls. More information about that is coming. We are having responses from each of the leaders' offices around that. So keep up to date with CanAge.ca. If you're not a member, we can't write you. So CanAge.ca/join. It's free membership. Just lets us write you. That's very important. And you can always write us anytime at info@CanAge.ca. At this point, I note our time. I'm so grateful to our expert today, David LeBlanc. Thank you, David, for all the work that you do across Canada and indeed around the world to make sure that people are able to vote and make sure that they're able to exercise their democratic right. To all of you, thank you again, CanAge.ca/join, so you can be kept in the loop of all the great information that we have. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bon après-midi tout le monde, and take care for the rest of your day. Bye-bye.